big boy. This is the one you want. It's got multi-tiers. The better the essay, the more cash you can extract from this organization. But as you know, there are numerous scholarships that you can apply for as well. And like the important thing is basically all of these like scholarship essays are kind of similar. They want to know who you are, where you want to go and why, what you're going to do when you get there, and then what are you going to do when you get back. So those all follow essentially those lines, more or less. So my point is that you can utilize what you've composed for the Gilman, do a little bit of copy and pasting, do a little sort of tailoring to that specific essay, but you can reutilize this essay multiple times to get as much money as possible. So I'm going to move this over a bit. So this is what we're going to do today. I want to discuss the prompts of the Gilman International Scholarship in great detail and how to like write specifically to these prompts. We're going to talk about writing strategies. I have some like brainstorming questions, time permitting. I don't know if we'll get there or not, but I have them. And then we'll talk about the WRC at the end. So let's get started. So the Gilman essay is like a fairly complex document. It's composed of 3 primary parts. Each part has a series of questions that you need to answer. And I'm going to repeat this obvious point again and again, so I apologize if this seems condescending. But you always need to like follow the prompt. As I've told my students like 800 times, you can write like an amazing essay, but if you don't follow the prompt, it's an F, okay? So it's the same thing here. If you write an amazing scholarship essay that doesn't address the questions of the Gilman, you're probably not going to get the money. So let's look at the constituent parts, right? So these are the general requirements. Your essay should be composed in a paragraph format. This is a crucial point that I'll talk about here in a second. So it should be an essay, obvi. There is a 7,000 character limit for the statement of purpose, which is part 1, and a 6,000 character limit for the community impact piece. That's part 2 and part 3. Weirdly, you don't format the text that much, so you don't use bold, underline, and italics in the Word document, so just like simple essay. And then again, for the second time, ensure that your essays address the prompt. So those are the general parameters. I'm going to break it down even further. So let's talk about the statement of purpose, part 1. So these are the general questions that the statement of purpose should answer. And this is lifted directly from the Gilman website directly. So how will studying or interning abroad help you achieve your future or professional goals? Why did you select your specific program in host country? So a lot of these are just like, again, who you are, why you chose where you want to go, and then what are you going to do? And what are you going to do with that experience? How are you academically prepared to be a successful scholar abroad? If you have faced significant academic difficulties, tell us about those and how you are overcoming them. I'm going to cover that here in a later slide. But it's really interesting that the Gilman specifically really wants you to focus or demonstrate that you are like a resilient person, that studying abroad is, this is like a crucial point. I'm sure Ali can back me up. You're not on vacation. You're going to be like working, like it's a challenging experience. So illustrating that in these essays, I think is crucial. And then what example of knowledge, skills, experiences will you draw to meet the challenges of growing abroad? This is a crucial bit, like you want to have a series of examples. I'm going to repeat this again and again in the presentation as well. Have strong examples to basically reinforce the arguments that you're making in this piece. And then this is like the word count or the word limit. 7,000 characters is what the website says. To break that down a bit further for you, That's like approximately 1,000 words. The 7,000 characters also include spaces. So that's approximately 1,000 words, or 3 double-spaced pages. I bring this up for 2 reasons. It's important to sort of recognize the tension of this word limit, as sort of boring and tedious as this requirement is. Number one, you don't want to go over. Like if you go over, your essay may just be disqualified. So don't go over the character count. But at the same token, you want to sort of push yourself to really get as close to 7,000 as possible. Again, I've taught like college composition for 12 years. Every year, students like will ask me, why do I have to write like 5 pages? I'm just gonna be repeating myself. Like, can't I just write like 1 page? And the answer is no. And the reason why like 7,000 is a good character limit is it pushes you to like dig deep for those examples, to explain yourself, to exemplify why you're an outstanding student who has like passion for this. So really utilize 7,000 as like an interesting, number one, barrier that you shouldn't cross. But in addition to that, it should be something that you aspire to sort of meet because you want to be as detailed and specific as possible. So that's the statement of purpose. And then there's the community impact piece. So the community impact essay is like a second part that is broken down confusingly into 2 additional parts. So the first part is essentially what's called like the mutual understanding aspect. And that should be roughly 450 words or 1 to 1.5 pages double space. And in this piece, you're going to reflect on once you're there in the abroad country, the destination country, how are you as a US citizen going to represent and share what it means to be an American during your program? How will you seek opportunities to become more culturally engaged and have meaningful interactions with people and cultures different from you during your abroad program? So it's, once you get there, how are you like sort of experiencing this culture, being open with it, interacting with people from different cultures? It's sort of like a reflective almost piece to the essay. And then the next piece, which is like the third part or the second part of this essay, I don't want to confuse you with all these parts, but you need to have a follow-on service project in mind. So before you even go, you need to think about, I'm going to go there, I'm going to experience like a cool culture, I'm going to learn a bunch of stuff, I'm going to do a lot of great stuff, and then I'm going to come back to the good old US of A. And I'm going to create an experience or a project that utilizes my abroad experience in some sort of interesting way. So you need to like start brainstorming that as well. What are you going to do when you come back to sort of, share what you learned? Like, how did it affect you? How can you best educate your fellow peers at UHD, perhaps even like a larger population than the student population here? But what kind of project can you do to help educate other people or teach them about, this, experience that you had? So how will it increase awareness of study abroad in the Gilman program among your peers in your home or campus community? Identify and explain why you chose the specific community you will be reaching. How will you integrate the impact of your experience abroad into your project? Which campus, departments, student organizations, or community organizers will you collaborate with? And hopefully you start thinking about that as you're composing, but I'm sure Ali can also sort of recommend what are some like typical like projects if you're really stuck on that piece. The interesting thing is it should be like creative and it should reflect like the passion that you have for this experience, but it doesn't have to be like a mind-blowing thing, right? It needs to be like I think the Gilman website has it as like creative yet realistic. So be realistic. Like it should be just, it can be something simple, as long as it has like a unique effect on like the campus community. We can talk about that at the end. So those are all of the prompts. So these are the crucial takeaways. Again, all combined, it's about 2,000 words, maybe a little less. That's like 5 or 6 double-spaced pages. So again, it's important to consider that. Your essay should address the prompt, and therefore, when you compose your initial draft, I would encourage you to go back, read through these questions. Your essay should answer every one of those like prompts that I discussed. If there's something missing, then you need to go back and integrate it. And it should be obvious, but your essay should in fact be like essays. So there's a tendency, particularly like, I don't know, you have a history class and you have an essay test, like students will just like answer like the questions in the prompt, 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't do that. Instead, you want to craft a thoughtful, flowing sort of discussion that addresses all these prompts. It doesn't even necessarily need to be in the order presented. If you want to construct a different order, it just needs to hit all those notes. But the important thing is that it's a cohesive sort of essay, right? And we'll talk about how to structure that here in a second. So those are just like the general takeaways from the prompts. So this is the rubric. So I stole this from the website as well. So these are all the things you're going to be assessed on. So when Ali reads through these essays, this is like the high sort of like grading criteria that he is looking for as he's grading these bad boys. This is like the insider sort of knowledge. So number 1, the applicant provides thorough details on the selected destination and program and how it will advance their academic and professional goals. Number 2, applicant provides detailed examples on how they will share the diversity of American culture and society, learn about the host culture, and build meaningful relationships while abroad. That's like a really crucial point, I feel. Like when you're there, what are you going to do? Like you want to be like an active sort of presence, I feel, abroad. So you need to be working, you need to be learning from other people. This is again a sort of learning experience and you want to exemplify that. And here's where my original point. Applicant proposes a thoughtful, creative, yet feasible follow-on service project. So it's something that you need to, as one person, kind of execute. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to like make a company or something absurd like that. Applicants' academic record and personal statements strongly indicate that they will be successful and gain benefit from an experience abroad. Again, the Gilman in particular really sort of sees study abroad as like a challenging, rigorous educational experience. So you need to demonstrate in these essays that I'm up to the task to actually do this. And then applicant provides thoughtful, detailed examples of how their background, knowledge, skills, and personal experiences will influence their program abroad and help them overcome any anticipated challenges. So those are all, the best essays are really going to exemplify those 4 points. So a lot of things to sort of like keep in mind as you're composing. Number 1, that you're addressing the prompt in all of those questions. And then when you read back, you've done that. So you've completed almost the bare minimum. Now you have this next sort of like analytical layer to sort of evaluate your essay. You have these 4 points. You need to ensure that your essay basically exemplifies those 4 points. Easier said than done. But I have some like general strategies here that basically illustrate how to sort of hit those points. So number 1, Be detailed and be specific. So this is going to be, if you've noticed when I read through those 4 points, this is like a reoccurring theme. They want examples. They want specificity. So you need to choose, as you're making these various points in which you're basically sort of selling yourself as a prospective candidate for this scholarship, a prospective candidate to study abroad. You need to reinforce these arguments with examples. So this is not unlike basic research writing. As opposed to outside research, you're just constructing examples from your own life to reinforce the arguments that you're making in this piece. Be passionate and utilize the rhetorical appeal of pathos. The judges want to see that you're passionate about this opportunity, so you want to rely on your examples and an expression of emotion to sway the judges in your favor. If you're kind of just like, my point is, you want to make them excited about giving you money to sort of realize your ambition. And if you don't do that, you've kind of failed the purpose of this paper. Like if it's just like a ho-hum, like I want to go to England because I think it would be rad, like that's trash. So you don't want to do that. So be like passionate and talk about how like this is going to like just blow my mind. Maybe not say that, but it's going to really sort of change my life, and it's going to have like a profound impact on me as a student, a future professional, and as a person. But at the same point, you want to be passionate, but then you also want to utilize strong essay writing practices. So be organized in your approach, enhance readability, obviously proofread and edit your text. Ali is an assessor of these essays. He's reading literally 50 to 100. So if your essay is like full of long, cumbersome, unwieldy sentences, if you have just one big paragraph, if your essay is just a hot mess to read, then it doesn't matter how passionate you are or how good your examples are. Like if he can't, like he's essentially trying to read through as many of these as possible and then assess and then go to the next one. If he cannot do that effectively, then it's not a very good piece. So you want to be clear, lucid, simple, direct. You don't have to write like I talk sometimes, like these like cumbersome Shakespearean sentences. Like you need to be simple and direct. It's essentially like a cover letter for a job in some ways, if you want to think about it like that. It's not like a narrative essay, all right? So these are the stylistic strategies. So I have some just pointers. Watch your utilization of the first person pronoun I. You want to use I in this paper. This paper is about you, who you are, what you're going to do in like the near future and then even the extended future. So you're going to use I a lot. But there's a tendency in these essays to start every goddamn sentence with I. I want to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. I want to do. So you really need, particularly starting sentences, like how do we vary that so not every sentence starts with I. I would, as always in academic writing, avoid using second person you, by the way. Pay attention to your verb usage. So you want to utilize like varied active verbs as opposed to just like being verbs. So being linking verbs like is, are, be, et cetera, et cetera. You can use them. In some sentences you have to use them, but I'm going to push you to utilize like active verbs. Again, enhance readability, clear, lucid, simple sentences, avoid conversational tones and slang, and be when possible, be specific. So mention specific classes, work experiences, locations, just really sort of create something that really exemplifies who you are as a person. The last thing you want to do is write an essay that anyone else could write, right? This is a profound point that I just stumbled on. If you write an essay that basically says, hey, I'm Joe, college student, like I've done this stuff, the end. That's trash. Like instead, who you are as a person, your unique experiences as a student, as a person, are really what's going to set you apart from other people, okay? So be specific. This is some like content sort of to consider. Unique content is best. So what sets you apart? And again, why should assessors of this essay be excited about giving you a scholarship? So here's some like elements to consider. You don't have to hit all of these, but have you been abroad before? If the answer is yes or no, you can turn that into a strength, right? Like if you've been abroad before, then you clearly are going to be perhaps successful. I didn't have the cash to go abroad. Like that's something that's, oh, is my internet connection trash? Am I back? Am I back? I'm back. All right.
You're back, yeah. Now you're not. Are you there, Joseph?
Financial need, I think they're going to be more inclined to give you the scholarship. It's not a requirement, but I think if you could tell that story, again, utilizing pathos, utilizing emotional appeal, like you're all college students, no matter your situation, you're probably all strapped for cash. Like you need this scholarship to go. So keep that in mind. And then pulling experiences. So do you have work experience that ties to study abroad? Will it tie into future work experience? If you're working in business, the answer is obviously yes. If you're working in the humanities, basically no matter your discipline, again, you need to make those connections. They're there. Like whatever your educational background, you can connect that to having a strong sort of benefit. Study abroad will have a strong benefit on your ability to be a student and a professional. Extracurricular activities, clubs, volunteer work is always nice no matter what. Integrate that into the personal statement. And then unique motivations or connections to your study abroad destination. Do you know much about your study abroad destination? I think it's nice if you do a bit of research or have some sort of connection to where you want to go, other than like, it would just be cool to get out of the United States for a bit. So what do you know about this place? Again, you're not a tourist. You're going to be like learning. So if you already have done a bit of work sort of researching where you want to go and you can articulate that, you've already illustrated to the assessors like, hey, I'm serious about this. So these are questions to consider. This is just like a tip on formulating paragraphs. Like for the body paragraphs of this piece, like think about as where, you know, you're writing like 6 pages combined. So a lot of students struggle with like that length. Each body paragraph should have a topic sentence that introduces the topic of the paragraph. Then you need to explain it in some way. And then provide an example. So examples, again, should be couched in the middle of paragraphs to reinforce arguments that you're making early on. And then you utilize that example as almost like a launch point to further discussion. So for every example that you integrate, reflect on the significance of that example. Why is it there? And then conclude. So this is just like a nice sort of like general roadmap to follow. Different paragraphs may have different functionalities in your paper, but if you're struggling with length, just go back to this sort of like roadmap. Did I actually like reflect on the experience that I provided? Things of that nature. All right, so I've broken down for you outlines to the two parts of the Gilman. You don't have to follow this outline. This is just one way to sort of help you conceptualize these documents. Like, how do I theoretically structure them? So on the left, I have the fundamental questions to the statement of purpose piece. And on the right, I have essentially like a sample outline. So at the start, you want like an engaging introduction with a thesis. Your thesis is basically just going to be the main idea of the statement of purpose, which basically is, I want to go here to do this because. That's like the fundamental like question you're answering. I want to go here to do this because, all right? So paragraph 2, who you are and why is going abroad important? That's question 1. So this would be paragraph 2, right? Why did you select the country would be paragraph 3. And then like, why do you want to go and what are you going to do when you get there? So that would be number 4. Some of these don't have to be there in like an individual paragraph. Like you can combine these 2 into 1 paragraph. But again, this is just like a logical progression that addresses all of these ideas. So after this, so this is like almost like a breakage, right? So you've discussed who you are, why you want to go to a specific country and what you're going to do when you get there. Then you want to sort of circle back and talk about why you are a good candidate for this journey, or why the Gilman organization should give you some cash to go. So you want to talk about like academic preparedness, like what sort of coursework have you done to prepare you for this? If you don't have it, that's totally cool. You just need some sort of experiential preparedness. Academic difficulties would be the next one. Again, this is like one of the questions. If you don't have academic difficulties, like don't like make them up. Like I think this like piece is basically like if you have like a low GPA or a lower GPA, whatever that means, like that's fine. You're still like a candidate for the scholarship. You just need to sort of explain like what these difficulties were and how you sort of overcame them, right? Again, the Gilman in particular is really sort of focused on like resiliency, which is an interesting sort of theme of the essay. And then how does one's personality or life experience inform the decision to study abroad? That's like another key bit. So what about you in particular? This is almost like, so you have tangibles, right? Like your coursework, your extracurriculars, your work experience, your life experience. These are like tangible events. And then this point 8 here is basically the intangible, like who you are as a person. Like what are some of your strong personality traits and why, how would those aid you in studying abroad, okay? And explain why. And then like a conclusion. Introduction and conclusion can be a little on the brief side. They shouldn't be like big, long paragraphs. I would encourage you for the introduction, I neglected to mention this, but as with every introduction, you want to engage the reader. If you have like a bland introduction, it's going to be just a boring read. So you need to like engage the reader. That's easier said than done, I admit. But like having like an anecdote, like a story is usually like a tried and true way. If you can tell a story that then leads to the thesis and then you start launching into the statement of purpose, I think you'll be in good shape. But if you're just like, yeah, I want to go to Germany, the end, that's not very good. And then I also mentioned here, so paragraph 1, like a nice example from your life might be a good way to start this piece. And then 5, 6, 7, and 8, think about examples that reaffirm or reinforce your preparedness, your ability to overcome like difficult situations, and why you want to study abroad. So these in particular, so you really be thoughtful about the examples that you choose to integrate into this piece, because that's like the lifeblood of your essay. Part 2. So part 2, again, broken up in 2 parts. And in the Gilman, so it's not like one, so the statement of purpose in the community impact piece is not like one essay. You can like have like a clear almost breakage between the 2. So the community impact, again, engaging introduction with a thesis, and then we get to this like reflective bit. So this is, again, just like your appreciation of diversity. And when you're abroad, you're really utilizing this as a learning experience. The mutual appreciation piece, or part one, this number 3 is the most important part of that. 2 or 3 specific opportunities that describe how you will become culturally engaged and generate meaningful interactions with people when you're there in the destination. That's like the most important part of this. So this number 3 should be like 2 or 3 paragraphs where, like, if you're going for an internship, really describe that internship. If you're going to, like, experience something that can only be found in your destination country, really reflect on that. Again, really talk about diversity, really talk about meaningful, like, relationships with people. Like, this is like the lifeblood of that piece. And then this next piece should be, once you know what your follow-up project or follow-on project is going to be, you're just describing that. That's like the second piece. So what is it? Who is it targeted to? How will your experience abroad inform that sort of project? Like, that's an important piece, by the way. Like, you should need to have to go to another country to do this, like, follow-up project. Otherwise, why go, right? So keep that in mind. Like, the relationship between the study abroad experience and the project that you're going to do, which reflects that. And then, who does this serve? Again, I would encourage you to take like an education kind of route. Like, you're coming back from this unique experience to educate other people. So really take that sort of like rhetorical angle. But this second part, once you have like a good project in mind, and again, I think Ali can really help you, if you're struggling with that, it's just describing it. All right, we're almost done. I wanted to provide, do I have time? I got a little time. All right. I wanted to good paragraph and a bad paragraph and sort of explain why. So this is a bad paragraph, boo, from The Magic Mountain, a novel by Thomas Mann, who was a Nobel Prize winning German author. And I really love all of his books. I feel like I want to study the culture that produced this literary genius. This will help me in my further studies. Slurper tea. Grammatically, it's perfectly fine. It's just, number 1, I. So overutilization of the pronoun I to start. This will help me in my further studies. It's just too general. Like, this is what I mean. That's general. So we need to explain why. And then I really love The Magic Mountain. I really love all of his books. Like, this is repetitive, redundant, unnecessary. So we have this is not absolutely horrible. It's grammatically correct. It has an example, but you can do better, right? So this is a better example. As a literature student, so if you're struggling with avoiding starting too many sentences with I, you just need to affix like a phrase to the start of the sentence. As a literature student, I want to experience culture to better understand literary works. So that's like a topic sentence. With a study abroad to Germany, I aspire to visit the University of Bonn. There, I will not only be able to practice my conversational German, but I will be able to attend a special lecture series on Thomas Mann. So we have a reason why we're going, and it's like 2 parts, right? Mann's work has always been important to me. His novel, The Magic Mountain, inspired me to study literature. Therefore, to learn about his work in his homeland would be an experience that I would never forget. This is like a similar sentiment to the bad paragraph, but it's more emotional. Like, I love this book. It like changed my life. It inspired me to pursue this like academic path. Or to learn about his work in his home country would be an experience I would never forget. Again, we're generating emotion here. Additionally, I plan on pursuing a graduate degree in comparative literature. This experience would bolster my graduate school application and serve as my future career. So we have, I want to go here for this reason. I'm going to do this. This is important to me. It's like profoundly impacted my life. And in the like near and far future, it's going to have all these effects. So I think it's important to have this sort of like, these are all the effects. It's really going to be like important in my life. These are some initial brainstorming questions. So to sort of get you started, like if you haven't like started thinking about this, these 5 questions are sort of like fundamental. Hopefully you already know where you want to go and why and what you plan to do. But these bolded questions are like really important to consider. Examples from your life that influence your study abroad experience. And then of course, the follow-up project, what you're going to do. And again, how can this be utilized, particularly for like specific campus populations. And then once you have these questions, and if you're having a hard time starting, like 10 minutes and write like 100 words answering each of these 5 questions. And that's like a good place to start. And then again, think about the examples that you're going to use in all these texts, what your thesis statements are going to be, and then, of course, utilize the Writing and Reading Center. So the Writing and Reading Center can help you compose this document. So if you're having problems getting started, like a writing consultant can work with you to sort of help you get started. But more importantly, if you have a draft, you want as many people to look at it as possible. So if this major and you know a professor, like have them look at it. Have a tutor look at it. That's their job.